one question I get the most, and I wanted to ask you right now, this is a big question from our fans. I get the question, why hasn't AEW hired Brandon Walker from Barstool Sports yet? I get that a lot. And I was just wondering, I wanted to pass that along to you right now, Tony Khan. I'm asking you right now, why haven't you hired Brandon Walker from Barstool Sports? Me being Brandon Walker from Barstool Sports.
Well, it's a great question, and I
Thank
think
you.
you have a great thing going at Barstool Sports, and
Not really.
I certainly don't want to poach you from this great company that's been a great media partner to us. I don't have the practice of, poaching from our media partners, and Barstool's been very kind to us, and I appreciate the platform and giving us the opportunity to plug our shows. And then once Dave figured out that I'm Tony Khan, not Nick Khan, he's been much nicer to me too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he doesn't like the other one. He likes you. All right, Rasslin Rides again. We are talking to one of our No. We are talking to our most frequent guest. This is the guy we have run back the most. And frankly, that's a good thing because he's one of the most important guys in professional wrestling. It is, of course, All Elite Wrestling president, Tony Khan. And I feel like these days when we talk, it's always about something important. And, buddy, yeah, this is important. AEW is launching a new show. A new show this Saturday night. AEW Collision on Saturday night. Tony, what can fans expect? First of all, hello, Tony. How are you?
Hi, Brandon. I'm very well. Thanks for asking. It's great to be here on the show. I'm in a steakhouse in Jacksonville right now. I've just had a great meal with Doug Peterson, Trent Baalke, and my dad, and the four of us got together, and I've got our interview here blocked in immediately after. So I've got a room in the steakhouse, and we're having a great visit today, and I'm excited to see you. Thanks for having me on.
All right, well, go ahead and crack open a bottle of wine if you'd like and relax, and we can just chill out and just drink some wine, whatever you want to do, man. Not a big deal.
Well, maybe after the interview we can pull one of these out.
But, it is an exciting time. It seems like it's always an exciting time for All Elite Wrestling. But Collision, man, you're launching a new show. You're always doing something, Ben. You're launching a new show this Saturday night. Tony Khan, what can fans expect from AEW Collision?
Well, I think that AEW Collision on Saturdays is going to be amazing wrestling, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, every week, every Saturday on TNT. I'm really excited about the show. We have a huge main event for the first episode, the return of CM Punk, teaming with FTR, taking on Samoa Joe, Jay White, and Juice Robinson. Going to be an amazing match. I'm really excited about what's happening across AEW. I think it's a huge month to have AEW Collision starting this Saturday on TNT and launch a new weekly 2-hour series. And for the first time ever to have 5 hours of weekly AEW TV, it's a big deal. And this month is such a huge month for us. We've got the launch of Collision coming up. First of all, even ahead of then, what a huge AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite on tap for tomorrow night. One of the best lineups. I'd like to start there because tomorrow night on TBS, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central for Wednesday Night Dynamite. We're back where it started. We're back where we did our original Wednesday Night Dynamite. And it's the Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. It's a great venue, and it's very special to AEW and our fans. And I'm really excited because I think it's going to be a great show. And the card is stacked. We have the AEW World Champion MJF versus Adam Cole in an eliminator match. It's huge. It's a great match. Very excited to have Adam Cole versus the World Champion MJF tomorrow night on Wednesday Night Dynamite. That's amazing. And last week we did a great rating for the show. And one of the things that did really well in the ratings was the segment with Adam Cole and MJF in the promo. And it really performed strongly for us on TBS last Wednesday. And I think now to see them wrestle this week after that great promo exchange last week, that bodes really well for the show this week. And just the lineup is stacked top to bottom. I saw Magnum TA tweet over the weekend what happened to the old wrestling posters. And it made me think, he's right. We should do a really special poster for Wednesday Night Dynamite. It's such a strong lineup. And in addition to that great match headlining on the poster that we put up, you see MJF versus Adam Cole. There's also so much great stuff top to bottom on this card. The BCC versus the Elite is one of the really exciting issues in pro wrestling right now.
Sure.
And what a huge match we have with the Young Bucks and Hangman Page versus John Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, and Wheeler Yuta, BCC versus Elite, coming off the Anarchy in the Arena match. That's an amazing trios match on this show, and really interesting to see what's happening with that story with the Blackpool Combat Club and the Elite. And very cool for the first time ever to have Hangman teaming with the Young Bucks on Dynamite. We've never had it. It's very cool, and it's certainly very fitting to have it where we started. And they were all a big part of the show from the beginning. And of course, John Moxley, big part of the show from the beginning. I think people are really excited for this week and this month. You know, we're launching AEW Fight Forever, the video game. We're approaching Forbidden Door. It's an exciting time.
So I'm gonna ask you all about Forbidden Door, All In coming up later this summer. Of course, the video game. I got a lot to talk about with that. I will just go back to Collision to start with, though, because you announced 2 weeks ago, I believe, on Dynamite that Collision would involve CM Punk, and then you announced CM Punk to be in the main event of the very first show. So CM Punk will be making his return to All Elite Wrestling this Saturday night. Tony, what does all that mean, man? What all went into this?
Well, it's very exciting. CM Punk's been out injured since All Out, and he had a tricep injury in the main event match. We have not seen him in a long time. I'm very excited about his return to the ring. He's one of the biggest names in AEW. He's a top star. He's one of the biggest names in all of wrestling. And one of his greatest rivals in his entire career is Samoa Joe.
Sure.
And I'm very excited to feature Samoa Joe on Collision also. I think it's very interesting they'll be on opposite sides of this match. It's also really cool that the AEW World Tag Team Champions FTR are going to be featured here on Collision and across all AEW programming. And FTR certainly are going to be showcased alongside CM Punk. I think they're a great trio, and really excited to have them in the first main event with CM Punk and FTR taking on Samoa Joe, Jay White, and Juice Robinson. And Jay White in particular is coming off his biggest win, I believe, so far in AEW, beating Ricky Starks in the main event last week on Dynamite. This is a great show for us. And Juice Robinson and Jay White are red hot as a pair. The Bullet Club Gold is doing really well, and I think those guys are on fire and excited about that big match on Collision. And I think for the fans who wanted to see CM Punk return, he's doing it in a grand fashion. And it's going to be really exciting to have CM Punk in such a big main event match, in such a huge show in his hometown, Chicago, for the debut of a new show, Saturday Night Collision. I think it's going to be really cool.
So with CM Punk returning in Chicago, obviously that's his hometown, but then, you know, the next week you'll be somewhere else, or, you know, how do you anticipate, do you have an idea of how you think the fans are gonna react to CM Punk when he makes his return?
Well, I think it'll be very exciting to see how the fans react, but I expect a very positive reaction, particularly in Chicago for the first episode. And I think then going forward, you know, CM Punk's one of the most popular wrestlers in the world. So certainly he's going to get a great reaction. And depending on who his opponent is and the type of reaction he's trying to get, I expect CM Punk to connect with the crowd as well as anybody in the entire pro wrestling business. He has an amazing connection with the fans, and I think that's part of his longevity and his mystique is his amazing connection with the crowd. CM Punk's a really great wrestler, and very excited to have him back in AEW starting this Saturday night on TNT on AEW Collision.
So Saturday Night Collision, of course, I want to ask you about this because how does Saturday Night Collision fit into the AEW world of other shows? Are there exclusive talents, or will Dynamite and Collision be working hand in hand? I haven't seen it yet, so I'm wondering what you would give me on that.
What a great question.
Thank you.
Well, to elaborate on that and answer your great question, I am going to feature certain talent on certain shows, but I haven't drawn any hard lines or locked us into any kind of a split of a roster. I think people are going to be featured on certain shows, but I also think that gives us a great opportunity to showcase certain wrestlers on both Dynamite and Collision at certain times and certain stories that can cross the shows. I think the champions of AEW will be the champions on every show, and frankly, every promotion in the world. We're not shy about the AEW wrestlers going out and taking on the top stars, top competition from other companies. A great example, and probably the best example, is AEW New Japan Pro Wrestling Forbidden Door. And you'll see a lot of the top stars from AEW taking on great stars from New Japan. And we regularly take on great wrestlers from all over the world. And I think our champions will defend those titles outside AEW, but certainly across all of AEW's content, all of our shows. And that's one of the really exciting allures to our shows, I think. And certainly the roster we have is so strong. I believe we had so many great wrestlers, it's impossible to showcase them all in 3 hours of television. Now it's a much better opportunity with 5 hours of television. And across 5 hours of television, we can really utilize the roster much more frequently and utilize our great wrestlers more than they've ever been utilized before. So I'm very excited.
Is there any concern, starting a show that's on a night like Saturday? Saturday night hasn't been one of the big nights for professional wrestling, at least in the last few years. Of course, when we
recently, but it has been in our lifetime.
When we were growing up, we had WCW Saturday night, and we had all the NWA shows. We had all that, but in recent years, it really hasn't. Although you guys have done a good job. You've been putting shows on pay-per-view shows on Saturdays and kind of making Saturdays more of a thing. But now you're launching a weekly show on Saturday night. It's kind of uncharted territory right now for any wrestling company as of right now.
Well, I agree with everything you said. But when we launched AEW, it had also been nearly 20 years since wrestling had been on TNT.
Sure.
And by the time we made it back to TBS, it had been over 20 years since TBS had wrestling. And now it's a big success with wrestling on TBS every Wednesday night for Dynamite. And we have Friday Night Rampage on TNT. And now, for the first time ever, Saturday Collision starts this weekend on Saturday night. I believe it's a great opportunity to make Saturday night a weekly staple for pro wrestling again. As you said, there's been big wrestling events, including a lot of great AEW shows on Saturdays at times, but we've been doing a lot of our pay-per-views on Sundays. So a Saturday night show made a lot of sense for us. Plus, the boss of the studio is very happy with the performance of AEW, and it was his idea. It was a great idea to put AEW on TNT on Saturday nights. And much like it boded well at the time for the company on the Turner networks in the 90s, when the boss of the studio said, hey, I believe it would be great to put the show on TNT. At the time in 1995, that was Mr. Turner. And now Mr. Zasloff, as the head of this massive Warner Brothers Discovery company, has confidence in AEW. And when he said that, it got me really excited. And I believe for us to have such a positive relationship with the strong management team at Warner Brothers Discovery bodes really, really well for AEW and our future. We're doing really special things, and they see that. The fact is, we have that Forbidden Door coming up, sold out. It's a huge event, and it's a really landmark event, unprecedented to have this kind of partnership between international promotions, especially two of the biggest promotions in the world, partnering for a worldwide event like Forbidden Door. And the historic milestones we've hit for AEW All In, which we can talk more about, they're unprecedented, truly. It's the biggest grossing live event in pro wrestling in the history of Europe, and it's months away, and we haven't announced a single match yet, and we're going to continue selling tickets and raising that revenue as we get closer and closer to the show at Wembley Stadium, August 27th. But it's certainly a historic event, and now it stands next to only a few of the highest grossing WrestleManias ever as one of the top grossing events in the history of pro wrestling. And when it's all said and done, it'll be right there amongst the top few ever. Just feels like the month of June is so many big landmarks, milestones coming out at once, and then building to a huge event later this summer, as we talked about with All In. But Saturday nights, I do believe it's possible. And again, when we brought AEW back to the Turner networks, it was doing something that hadn't been done in a long time. And it was a very familiar tradition to a lot of people, including yourself, to watch wrestling on TBS and on TNT. And we are playing into that. And we like that familiarity. I love being at TNT and TBS because it's a place I grew up watching wrestling. And I know a lot of people across America did and all over the world. And I think for Saturday night, it's been a big night for wrestling. And in America, there's a big tradition of that. And I believe we can make a new tradition with Collision. but something that feels familiar and nice, because so many companies and so many different shows have run on Saturday Night Pro Wrestling, and a lot of great ones that people have great memories of. And I think it's great for us to have this real estate. It's great space for us. And so that's kind of the idea of it. But I know for you, you're somebody who grew up watching wrestling on TBS and TNT, and you're somebody who also grew up watching wrestling on Saturday.
I did.
So if I can get you interested in it and get a lot of people in this same demographic that would watch the show, I think it's really interesting and exciting for us.
Well, I'm only 26 years old, Tony, so I don't really remember it exactly like that, but sure, I'm 44, whatever, doesn't matter. I can't wait. I'm excited, and yes, I remember the days where when I was a young kid, I would watch Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and all these great guys out of Atlanta, out of Charlotte, out of all those, and then later what WCW Saturday Night came on. So I'm excited for it. I do have a couple questions about this summer.
Saturday Night's main event.
Oh, yeah, my God. Saturday Night's main event. I wasn't even thinking about that. I was thinking about WCW Saturday Night like a simpleton over here.
Well, no, I mean, of course, there's great shows on TBS, and that makes a lot of sense. And now we're going to be on TNT every Saturday night, bringing that tradition of the Turner Networks on Saturdays. But also Saturday Night's main event, great show on Saturday. There's been a lot of great shows on Saturday night, and other wrestling companies too. And frankly, fight night on Saturday makes a lot of sense. There's great competition too. I mean, I know there'll be UFC, boxing, and other wrestling events, but I think Saturday is great. And also it's amazing for AEW that we were given the opportunity to run this and to expand the TV platform.
All right. So this crazy summer, you're launching a TV show this Saturday. Then you got Forbidden Door. Then you got All In London. You're launching a video game in the midst of all this. Like, you're still a young company, man. You're going on 4 years now since you've been on TV. But that's a hell of a lot for a couple of months, Tony. Slow down, maybe.
Well, it's an exciting time. Think about how far we've come since I went up to see you a couple of years ago, as we were coming out of a lockdown pandemic. You'd come down to Jacksonville and there was no traveling, touring wrestling. Now we've been back on the road for 2 years officially. And as we're hitting that 2-year mark, being back on the road, it's really interesting to look at it and how far the business has come and the things we've accomplished and the new goals that we put in front of ourselves. And I think as wrestling fans, people love having all these great things to look forward to. It's a hot time for the wrestling business. It's great for us. And I believe it's one of those things, like a few years ago, before we launched AEW, I think there was a good opportunity in the wrestling business. And I saw that, and the timing of it from both a media standpoint and to build a strong roster, the timing was right. And now you're starting to see a lot of the big revenue opportunities coming out there for the company. And I think this month in particular, June, is a big one. I laid out a bunch of those things, but Collision coming this Saturday. First of all, really strong Dynamite card tomorrow night on Wednesday night. Big rating last week for Dynamite against really tough competition. Great to put up 0.33. And I think having that number last week and being able to build on that to have another strong show this week on Wednesday, that's great. And then leading that into Collision Saturday night, there's so much to look forward to, being at the United Center in Chicago, and the return of CM Punk, so highly anticipated. And then this time to have CM Punk making a highly anticipated return to pro wrestling in what an exciting main event that match is. And that's something really special. And then you've got, on top of that, Forbidden Door is such a cool event. It's so historic. I think when we were growing up, I can't speak for you, but to me, there was Starrcade 95, but it was very different because New Japan's perception in the world was different at that point. I think New Japan built a bigger worldwide audience than Starrcade 95.
What was your favorite match? What was your favorite match from Starrcade 95? I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I had to ask that question. What was your favorite match from Starrcade 95?
Well, that's a great question. I'm going to say that's a good one. This is going to be ridiculous because it's not the best match on the card, but
There's a right answer to
I
this.
think I have to say that it's not considered the best match on the card, but having I wouldn't say it's one of the matches involving the new. That's kind of my point because I
Sure.
don't think the New Japan rivalry had been built up as strong. And while it wasn't the strongest in-ring thing on the show, I think the reason a lot of people bought Starrcade '95 was what was happening with the world title. And I am a huge Ric Flair fan and was a huge Ric Flair fan at the time. And to see Ric Flair walk out of Starrcade with the world title was pretty cool. So at the time, that was certainly what I was the most excited about by far. I went nuts.
I liked Eddie Guerrero against Otani, and I didn't know
That is it. Eddie Guerrero against Otani was great. The matches were great, but I think at the time, like a lot of the buys for the pay-per-view were driven by the title. And like I said, now that's kind of my point. I feel like the New Japan stories are so strong, they fit in really well with the AEW stories. But at the time, I think when Ric Flair left the pay-per-view after the three-way match, seeing Rick the belt, because a lot of people, the way he'd been treated on TV around then, didn't think he was going to leave with it. So I was very stoked on that.
Let me ask you this, and I don't know the answer to this question. That's why I'm asking you, because I assume you do. We're going to have All In London, England, a couple of months from now. Will there be an All Out?
Well, it's a great question. We'd be approaching the 5th annual All Out, so I think it's safe to say I am not going to miss that kind of an opportunity. I'm waiting to confirm what people can expect, but certainly we built a great tradition with All Out, and this is going to be the 5th year of it, and coming up on the 4-year anniversary of the original All Out. And now, of course, we're doing All In for the first time in AEW All In London, and it would be very fitting for there to be All Out. So stay tuned for more information on that.
I think you're telling me we'll find out soon. So I got to ask about certain guys, certain wrestlers in your company, because the company is made up of wrestlers, right? And that's what we watch for. We watch for certain stars. We watch for what they do. MJF is now going on what, I guess 6-7 months as champ. He won it in November. I guess we're in 6th month. So he's been champ for a while now. How's that been for you, Tony, watching MJF as your number one guy?
Well, MJF's a great wrestler, and the matches where he's gone out and wrestled have been great. And that's why I'm so excited for tomorrow night on Wednesday Night Dynamite. I think MJF versus Adam Cole is going to be a great wrestling match. It's almost a virtual certainty. Those two are two of the very best in the world. And I'm very excited for tomorrow night on TBS to have MJF wrestling Adam Cole. And when MJF actually steps up and isn't ducking people and will wrestle, he's one of the best. And I think we've seen that. And frankly, right now, he's got the claim to being the best wrestler in the world by being the AEW World Champion. And he's had great matches. The 4-way match at Double or Nothing was awesome with Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin, and Jungle Boy. Very excited to see all 4 of those wrestlers and where they end up going forward. And really, I loved MJF versus Bryan Danielson in the 60-minute Iron Man match. That was a classic match, and I thought Revolution this year was one of the best shows we've ever done, start to finish. And now MJF versus Adam Cole, it's a dream match. It's a great opportunity tomorrow night on Dynamite for him to prove why he's the best wrestler in the world, but it's also a great opportunity for Adam Cole to step up and prove why he should be the AEW champion and get that world title shot.
I don't know how often you're able to take off your executive hat for just even a moment and just be a fan and just enjoy a match as a fan would. I don't know if you're able to do that, or I don't know if you do it all the time. But that 4-way with Darby Allin, Sammy Guevara, Jungle Boy, and MJF, to me, that was a 25-minute period where it was just a joy to watch those 4 guys wrestle. Like, I really enjoyed it at that level. Do you ever get a chance to enjoy a match like that?
I loved that match. It was so great. I thought it was amazing. I did enjoy it. Certainly, I was involved in producing the show throughout the match. So from start to finish, I was giving production cues and involved in producing the pay-per-view. And there were things we needed to do to make sure that was a great show. Those 4 having a great match was a big part of it. And all 4 of them delivered in a great part of a double main event. I think the 4-way match was amazing. The Anarchy in the Arena was amazing. It was a classic double main event. And that really made it a successful Double or Nothing pay-per-view for us. And certainly you had to give credit to all four of them for having a great match. I felt like I really enjoyed it. Certainly there are times where I can really take off the hat and enjoy it. And it's after the fact. And when I went back and watched the pay-per-view again, it was such a joy to watch the match, not being there in the live production seat, but certainly I did enjoy it while they were having it. And when I really get to kick back and watch wrestling the most is watching it when I'm not there, watching other people's shows or watching old shows and looking back now with a different kind of analytic eye on old wrestling and trying to learn from things, good and bad, from old wrestling. And that can be stuff we've done in the past or in particular, the wrestling we grew up on.
Take me through that real quick. When you produce a show and you work on a show and you're in the building and you're in the moment, how quickly will you rewatch, like a show like Double or Nothing, for example? How quickly will you rewatch it?
I watched Double or Nothing back the next day. And a big event like Double or Nothing, Forbidden Door, a big pay-per-view, I would watch the next day. And a lot of times with Dynamite, I actually watch it back that night. It's hard to watch the pay-per-view back that night after I finish the media scrum and everything that goes into it. And the pay-per-views run a little bit later than the TV, typically. So I wouldn't watch the pay-per-view always that night, but a lot of times I watch Dynamite back the same night. And now with Collision, I'll probably watch Collision back the same night pretty regularly. It's nice with the West Coast feed, being able to watch it. So if the show's on at 8 o'clock on the East Coast, you can catch the West Coast feed and watch it at 11 o'clock. Or if we're in Central Time, obviously the show starts at 7, then I can watch the West Coast feed at 10.
Sure. Two more wrestlers I want to ask you about just for individual performances of late. While MJF is the champ and has been doing great things, I would argue nobody in 2023 has had a better individual run in AEW than Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy as your international champion. Talk me through that run and how that's going, because he's been every single week going out there. You complained about MJF not wrestling. Well, you can't complain about that with Orange Cassidy. He's wrestling every week.
Absolutely. Orange Cassidy as the international champion has been amazing. He's made many great defenses across all of our shows. He's defended the championship on Dynamite, Rampage, Battle of the Belts, and pay-per-view, taken on all comers at times, whether it was a 3-way match or any challenger individually who stepped up, or fighting 20 men at the same time in a classic over-the-top rope battle royal at Double or Nothing. Orange Cassidy has been a fighting champion and has had so many great matches. And I think a lot of the best matches in AEW in the past year have involved Orange Cassidy, in particular as the champion. He's a great international champion. But even before the championship, Orange Cassidy had some great matches. I thought last year at Forbidden Door, one of the best bouts on the entire card, and really many people, it was their favorite match of the night, was Will Ospreay versus Orange Cassidy. It was great. And they had a great chemistry. You could tell in the build up to the pay-per-view, and it was a complete home run of a match. And since then, Orange Cassidy's been really dialed in since he won the All-Atlantic Championship from PAC in a great match in Toronto. And then he's continued to defend it. And we leveled up the championship, and Orange Cassidy defended it and leveled the title up against Jeff Jarrett. And he's had so many great matches along the way recently, and just even late last year, this title reign started. Great match against Shibata for the All-Atlantic title at the time in Atlantic City with Mike Tyson on commentary. And that was a really memorable match. And then we had Orange Cassidy defending the championship against Wheeler Yuta, which I thought was an excellent, excellent match on Dynamite. And he's had so many great matches along the way recently with Kyle Fletcher. And then last week, what a great opening match with Swerve Strickland versus Orange Cassidy for the championship. After Orange Cassidy and Swerve had that amazing closing sequence that was really, really special at Double or Nothing when Orange Cassidy retained the title. Then Orange and Darby had a great match against the Gates of Agony. You know, there's been a few weeks where Orange Cassidy, if he hasn't been defending the title, he's been in big tag matches with Darby. And tomorrow night, speaking of Orange Cassidy and Darby, they're teaming up again. And I brought up Orange's rivalry with Swerve and the Mogul Embassy, the Gates of Agony, and Brian Cage. Well, they're all in a big match tomorrow night on Wednesday Night Dynamite. And now, not only is Orange Cassidy teaming with Darby Allin, but they'll both be teaming with Sting. Yep. And to have those guys with Sting, what a fan favorite team that is. And then to add in Keith Lee, who's got so much history with Swerve Strickland and wants to get his hands on Swerve and the whole Mogul Embassy. I just think this is a really cool match. I'm very excited for it. And I think it's a great opportunity for all 8 men in the match. And anytime we can do anything involving Sting, I feel pretty good. But to have all of them out there, I think it's great. And to answer your question about Orange Cassidy, he's been a great fighting champion. And then even in the few weeks where he hasn't been out there defending the title, he's been out there in these great tag team matches and multi-man matches, often teaming with Darby Allin or the Best Friends or Bandito or all of the above.
Sure. One question I get the most, and I wanted to ask you right now, this is a big question from our fans. I get the question, why hasn't AEW hired Brandon Walker from Barstool Sports yet? I get that a lot. And I was just wondering, I wanted to pass that along to you right now. Tony Khan, I'm asking you right now, why haven't you hired Brandon Walker from Barstool Sports? Me being Brandon Walker from Barstool Sports.
Well, it's a great question, and I think you have a great thing going at Barstool Sports, and
not really.
I certainly don't want to poach you from this great company that's been a great media partner to us. I'm not in the practice of, poaching from our media partners, and Barstool's been very kind to us, and I appreciate the platform and giving us the opportunity to plug our shows, and then once Dave figured out that I'm Tony Khan, not Nick Khan. He's been much nicer to me too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he doesn't like the other one. He likes you.
Yeah, I know. That's great. Unfortunately, he had to learn it in the middle of a show, the difference between us. But then once he did, he's been very positive about it, and I'm glad he likes me and doesn't think I'm a backstabber.
Last person I wanted to ask you about, and I'll let you get out of here soon, because I know you got to get to that bottle of wine behind you. I thought at Double or Nothing, the last 2 matches were incredible, but before those 2 matches, kind of setting the tone for the last hour and a half, was the return of Chris Statlander, who came back and won the TBS championship from the Jade Cargill, who had a great run herself. But, Statlander's had injury issues, and she's had issues where she's been gone for a while, and to have this return on pay-per-view in this huge moment and follow it up the last couple of weeks like she has, talk about her for me.
Chris Statlander winning the TBS championship was an amazing moment at Double or Nothing, and absolutely, she's been following it up. She's made multiple title defenses across AEW Dynamite on TBS with that TBS championship, but also she's been a fighting champ, fighting a lot of the top women in AEW at House Rules, AEW house shows, and she's made multiple great defenses already of the championship, and I'm sure Chris is going to continue to be a great fighting champion for AEW.
My last question right now, remember the Titans or Rudy?
That's a kind of an interesting comparison because they're about different levels of football. They came out at very different times, so I wasn't expecting it. Now I'm thinking about it a little bit, and I think I'm going to say Rudy because I grew up on Rudy, but now I really remember the Titans, and I'm thinking maybe I should say that's tough. It's a really tough call.
It's a toss-up.
It's a toss-up.
It's a tough one.
Great. Well, so I guess now, first of all, I have to say you probably have a take on this, so I'd love to hear what you think before I lock my decision. And would you filibuster for one?
Yeah. So I'm going to go with. First of all, I think both are a little overrated. I think Friday Night Lights is the greatest football movie ever made, but I remember the Titans as a whole movie is better because Rudy, the last 45 minutes are elite, but getting there is kind of a slog, right? It's kind of boring. But once he gets to Notre Dame, it's great.
There's a lot of non-football material in both movies, and there's positives to that, sure. I think. Just like in Hoosiers, not all of that movie takes place in the basketball. I think with Rudy and Remember the Titans, there's some really important scenes that take place off the field.
Sure, there's important scenes, but Rudy, it just takes forever to get there, and it's like a dark movie. I don't know. The first 45 minutes for Rudy, I could do without, but the last 45 minutes are great.
I think that's a great take. It makes a lot of sense to say that Remember the Titans start to finish is probably stronger, but Rudy, wow, what an ending.
Have you seen Air yet?
I've not seen Air yet.
You need to see Air.
I've heard Air is very good.
Air is very good. My next question was going to be about Air, but you haven't seen it, so you're probably pretty busy though.
Well, I'm very busy, and I had more time to see movies before I worked in pro sports and pro wrestling. But what are some other movie questions you would ask?
Okay, well, if we're doing that, then we can do that. Let's see. I started a sports movie podcast on the side, by the way, and I compared Little Big League to The Sandlot because my take is The Sandlot is more beloved by people. They love The Sandlot. I think Little Big League is a better movie than The Sandlot. What do you think about that?
100% agree with you. Again, I think that's a great take, and I would say that also that Little Big League is one of my favorite sports movies, and The Sandlot is great. I really love The Sandlot, and I agree. I think The Sandlot is more remembered and more fondly thought of, but I think Little Big League is just the best, and I love it.
I love it too. It's so good, and but The Sandlot is more famous and more people love it. Rookie of the Year, I thought was trash. I didn't like it at all. But you being an Illinois guy, maybe you liked it because it was a Cubs movie. You did like it, didn't you?
Growing up in Illinois, you like Rookie of the Year, and there's a lot of fun stuff in Rookie of the Year. I think Little Big League I prefer to Rookie of the Year, but certainly I enjoy Rookie of the Year.
Yeah,
That's Deadman.
Yeah, my favorite baseball movie is Major League, and then Bull Durham is my number 2. And then it gets tough because Moneyball was good, but Major League is my all-time favorite baseball movie.
Major League is my favorite sports movie. I think it's the best.
Mine as well.
It's the best, and I love Major League. It's one of the best movies ever. And for number 2, I mean, Little Big League to me would probably be right there. I really think Bill Haywood had a real winning formula there with the Twins. And I also agree with you. I love Bull Durham, but there are some other movies I would slot in there. And Moneyball is definitely up there. I love the book Moneyball.
Yeah.
Probably be one of my favorite books also. It's a great movie.
So what are the other baseball movies you would slide in there?
Well, it's a great question.
Thank you.
So I think there were a bunch of great baseball movies that came out around the same time.
Sure.
Some of the ones that would be kind of edged out that I'm not going to put in here, I will just mention them. I thought Angels in the Outfield is a fun kids movie.
Sure.
But it's not as much about baseball.
Right.
It's more of a backdrop for a story about orphans. And it's a good story and it's a nice movie, but it's not as much about baseball.
No,
and then I agree with you about The Sandlot. I think it's beloved, and it would be up there for me, but probably not as high as Major League or Little Big League.
Yeah.
I think there are some other really, really strong baseball movies that you got to consider. First of all, when you're looking at baseball films, it's not Major League, it's not Little Big League to me in terms of quality, but I have a really good time with Major League 2, and I think Major League 2 holds up better than most people want to admit. I know you and I have spent some time on this show talking about it and the pros and cons, and I think the pros far outweigh the cons.
Well, I think it's a fine movie. I just love the first one so very much. And Major League 2 is they just run back the hits, right? They do the same
It's some, but it's different things. Like there are some different aspects to Major League 2. For example, some twists on it. Obviously, Wild Thing, selling out.
Right.
That's different. And a little bit of a different look at Wild Thing. And then, Willie Mays Hayes making movies with Jesse the Body Ventura. I thought that was pretty cool. Unfortunately, it's not Wesley Snipes, so there's a con, and as opposed to all these great pros. Parkman, a little different. Parkman.
I did like Parkman. I like Parkman. I thought he was a good addition.
And that's a big part of the charm of Major League 2. And then the big Rick Vaughn Parkman showdown that's inevitable. And, walking back to get to Parkman, pretty crazy. But obviously Taylor's thinking,
I don't know what the heck he's thinking.
Yeah. And so it's a great film. And I think, frankly, the what an asshole scene is like
it's good.
What an asshole.
It's good.
That's a great scene. And I think like the way he just took a look at himself in the mirror, that's pretty classic moment in Rick Vaughn. Also, another thing to consider, I don't think Major League 2 necessarily on the level of Major League, but there's a lot of, it's self-aware. So there's more like gags, and a lot of them work, like Yoshihiro Kamikaze Tanaka, formerly Tokyo Giants.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great stuff there. Obviously, the dynamic between Tanaka and Serrano and the marbles and the juggling, and that's great stuff.
You haven't even mentioned Rube Baker, who made the rooster. There's that.
Some of the best lines in Major League 2 are Rube Baker, who's a character who wasn't in the original Major League. So it's not just really playing the hits. They did bring out some different stuff, and I'm not saying it's Major League, but it's one of the best baseball movies still, I think, is Major League 2.
Well, how do you slot a League of Their Own in there? Because it's pretty good, too.
That would be also up there. That's and that would also be one of the ones I would put near the top. I think A League of Their Own is excellent. And again, it's obviously very different from these other movies. It is a largely female cast, and they have a great dynamic, and there's a bunch of huge stars.
Yeah,
and it takes place in a different era, not like the modern baseball, like Major League and Little Big League, which are a little bit more recent. I think really strong movie. A little League of Their Own is a great one, and Tom Hanks is tremendous as Jimmy Dugan, and great performances from Gina Davis and Madonna and lots of other people in A League of Their Own. It's a great movie. I also think when you're looking at baseball movies, there are some older ones that you look at, like Field of Dreams.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. One, I think Field of Dreams is one of my favorites.
But is it a baseball movie or is it a dad movie?
It's a lot of, again, it's like a lot of, that's probably like what I was saying about, honestly, it's like Angels in the Outfield. Again, it's about like family relationships, about the family or the lack thereof in Angels in the Outfield, maybe. But I think there's a lot of baseball in both of them. And Field of Dreams is just such a great movie. And there's baseball in practically every other scene, or at least baseball. So I think, Field of Dreams is still baseball.
It's a baseball movie, and it's great. It's just baseball's got really a lot of movies. Anyway, I feel like I'm going to get some dirty looks if I don't wrap you up soon, because I know you got to go. I'll close you out like this, okay? We talked about All In and All In coming up. We talked about Forbidden Door. We talked about Collision, a huge Dynamite this week, tomorrow night. All that going on this summer. Tony, I guess you can take this question wherever you want, but starting now and continuing through this summer and past that, what's the immediate future look like for AEW, and how do you continue to build on this momentum?
Well, it's a great time for AEW. It's really exciting to have so many great opportunities to put the company in a new light, to hit new highs this summer. Very excited about this week, like I said, to have Wednesday Night Dynamite with such a loaded lineup tomorrow night on TBS this week. Wednesday, big show, and then to come up Saturday with the debut of Collision, again with the return of CM Punk in Chicago at the United Center in front of a huge crowd. It's going to be very, very, very exciting for us just this week alone. But then this month with the launch of AEW Fight Forever, our exciting video game that we've been working on for a long time and are really pumped to share with everybody, and partnering with New Japan to present another AEW New Japan Forbidden Door pay-per-view event all this month, and then building up to our biggest event ever with AEW All In and setting a lot of milestones. It's like really cool. And in between, there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff in July for us to talk about. So I think hopefully I get to see you again soon and do another one of these, and maybe I'll get up to your studio next time.
Well, I'm moving to Chicago. I'll have a new studio in Chicago very, very soon, and hopefully I know you guys come through there a lot. One last little small thing, not a big deal, but I haven't received my free copy of AEW Fight Forever yet.
Well, we will surely rectify that.
All right. Okay.
And also, I have a home in Chicago and have spent much of my life in Chicago. So I would love to see you in Chicago and record at your new studio, and I can visit with you up in Chicago more often.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Anyway, speaking of awesome, AEW is awesome. They're going to have a great summer. AEW Dynamite this Wednesday, and then Collision this Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Check them both out. They're great shows. If you like wrestling, you'll love that. Of course, if you've made it to this point in the interview, I assume you love wrestling. So thank you very much to my frequent guest, Tony Conte. Tony, thank you as always.
Thank you, Brandon. It's great to see you, man.
It's fantastic. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is wrestling.